Just want to let you know, we're gonna be talking about the business of the business here. Can you guys hear me in the back? Am I loud enough? Okay. All right. Do you want me to be louder? Wider? Okay, I'll be as loud as I can. Business of the business. If you hate this, blame Sean Caffrey. All right. Because he suggested to Kim that I do this business of the business thing at this presentation, and Kim went, "Yeah, that sounds great." So if you don't like it, blame him. If you love it, all right. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna jump right into it. It's gonna be a lot of math, a lot of stuff that we missed the slide. All right. Slide 1 of 147. Let's go. All right, lots of numbers. All right, I'm not doing that to you guys. All right. Hopefully we'll have some fun. I need to ask a question. How many people are on alert because your spouse or your significant other is about to have a baby, and any second you're going to get called? Where are all those people? Nobody. Awesome. Okay. Now you get to see a picture of my dad. And the reason I'm going to give you a picture of my dad, because he had a favorite song that I'm going to play for you while you take that envelope and you put your phone in it. And then close the envelope and put your phone away, and I'll explain in a minute. All right? Put your phone in it. Phone's not playing. Oh, we need sound. Oh, how do we undo that? Never mind.
You want me to come up there?
Now.
Yeah.
That. All right. So my dad's favorite song was from the movie Mary Poppins. The original movie Mary Poppins, sung by Julie Andrews. It was called "Feed the Birds." Anybody know that song?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Dad loved that song. Walt Disney loved that song. Of all the songs that they produced at Disney, that was his favorite. All right. My dad's a World War II era guy. I'm going to refer to him several times during this presentation. All right. The other thing, all you guys with your phones in your envelope, trust me, you're going to be okay. All you people with your computers up acting like you're taking notes, please put them down because I know you're just responding to email. All right. I sat in the back of the room yesterday while Asbel was going. Clearly 60% of you are not paying attention. So I'm just going to force the issue a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to make this as finance is boring. Accounting is boring. We'll try to have some fun. Okay. You've all been on your phone for 45 seconds. Is everybody okay? I just want to check. This is good. All right. So Simon Sinek, somebody mentioned back in the room mentioned Simon Sinek yesterday, which is interesting because he's a cool guy, writes a lot of books. Let's start with why. So I'm going to just say, why do I get to talk to you? All right. So why am I qualified? I've been doing this for 43 years, right? All in the 80s, I was a paramedic, EMT, firefighter, flight paramedic, all that. Then I got into management, started 2 companies. I've been CEO or CFO for 23 years of a company that I've been a majority owner of, or a big owner of. The 2 company starts, lots of big growth, right? We took on Boulder at one point. Apex Paramedics just took on University Hospital last year. That was a big growth spurt for us. And the reason I'm going to talk about growth is because we're going to chat about cash flow and things. I'm not an accountant by training, but I've learned to be an accountant. And between billing for Primark Paramedics and Apex Paramedics and all the billing customers we have, I've been kind of overseeing north of 1 million ambulance transport bills. All right, so we're going to chat. I'm not going to get into how do you send a bill and how do you push F10 and how I'm not going to do any of that. All right, just going to talk about the macro part of this. All right, first I want to talk a little bit about just business in general. If this gets too boring, raise your hand and we'll just move along, right? But I want to talk about some aspects of this risk reward. And for all of you who are in the room, how many of you are any CEOs here that own a private business? You own privates? Okay, awesome. How many are CEOs of a taxpayer funded fire department, district, or city department or something? Okay. All right. If you are with the municipality side and you're thinking, I want to start an ambulance company, right? Please pay attention. Or if you have a big growth opportunity, we're going to merge with another district or we're going to take on another project. I mean, Fort Collins 911 just went out to bid. All right, we just got that the other day. So somebody's gonna maybe win that and take over and have a big start coming up. Boulder just went out to bid recently. Don't know what's going on with Boulder. All right. Anybody from Colorado Springs Fire here? Nobody? Okay, we'll talk about that. All right, because remember, they've been trying to go to bid for a while, so somebody's gonna have some kind of startup if that ever changes hands. All right, and when you do a start, you have to take a big risk. When we started Apex up, I had to take a big risk. I put my net worth into it. I got some of my buddies to invest in it, and they all took a big risk. Now, it could flounder. You guys know that in the first 5 years, most businesses, new businesses fail. Over 50%. They just failed. So anybody who invested in that business took a big risk, hoping for a bigger reward, and it failed. Sometimes the business does really, really well. All right. Have a buddy who invested $50,000 with a guy who was driving from the East Coast to the West Coast. He was said, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy. He's got a tech company idea." He invested 50 grand early on before the company was even had a name. High risk. The company he invested in was a little thing called Uber, and it paid off about 250 million. Now, that's a rarity. Okay. The people who invested in my company were just friends of mine that I played golf with and other knuckleheads who said, "You're going to start another ambulance company? All right, we're in. Here's some money." All right. But they took a risk. They put it on, risked it on me and my ideas. All right. And when we do investments, this is just macroeconomics. The country, our capitalism, or whatever you want to call it, needs investment. All right. When we started Apex up, we bought 6 brand new ambulances, 4 heart monitors, cots, hired 25 or 30 people right off the bat. So that helped the economy. We're giving more people money to spend. You buy an ambulance, somebody's got to have manufactured the ambulance, somebody's got to have manufactured the parts that go into the ambulance, and all of this stuff helps, right? So it's just a macro thing that we want investment in the country. Just talk briefly about tax incentives for that. So when somebody invests in a brand new company, if you're going to go out and start one, or you've already got one, and if we get some owners here, if you got to go out and get more investment or whatever that is, there's tax incentives. Right. And I'm not going to get political, but last year during the election, there was people talking about raising capital gains to be the same as normal or ordinary income. You guys, anybody hear that?
Yep.
Comments? Okay. One of the incentives for investing is that you get to pay long-term capital gains if the company does well and makes profit, and the company sells, people will get profit. The incentive is that capital gains are lower than ordinary income. In Colorado, it's about 14%. So somebody starts a business, sells it for $1 million, they save about 140,000 because the taxes are low. That's an incentive to invest because you have a lower tax burden. Does that make sense? So when people say, let's raise that to ordinary income levels, that will kill investment. Because I wouldn't do it. I mean, if you're going to start a business, you say, "Hey, Mike, will you give me some money?" And I say, "Well, that's high risk. You're doing something you don't really know. You're an EMS now, but you want to start a, I don't know, taco stand. That's high risk. What's my incentive? If the income's the same as I could just stick it in the bank and earn some interest, no risk. So you have to take risk. All right. But a lot of businesses fail. All right. Whoops. So every business, every entity in the room, tax funded, not, that's basically 3 main stakeholders. Our employees are first, right? Customers are second, investors are third. Everybody agree with that in that order? There's no AMR people here, are there?
In that order?
In that order. Where do you think AMR sits in the world?
Ideally,
We all want to be here, right? What we should be doing is thinking, if we take care of all 3 at the same time, we'll be successful. If we make our employees happy and we invest in our employees, they will make our customers happy. We'll continue to call us, and that will make our investors happy. And you all have investors, right? You private folks, you either did it yourself. I have some investors plus my money. Everybody else has investors called taxpayers. You're citizens. Okay? And some of them are all 3. They live in your district, they work for you, and they pay taxes. Right? So I would guess that AMR, because they're owned by this company called KKR, which owns GMR, which owns AMR, which has regional presidents, and then they have the local people. And they care about that. KKR cares nothing about this. They say they do, but they don't. All they care about is making money. Okay, KKR is this gigantic equity company, and there's been a lot of buzz in the last 10 years about equity companies getting into healthcare. They're buying hospital systems, they're buying all of these things, and what they're doing is they're really, really trying to get lots of money in return, and it's affecting the healthcare that's being delivered. Okay? Everybody agree with that? Itch. Okay. And then a lot of people are only focused here and they forget about you're still going to make profit. We'll talk about that in a minute. Okay. Couple other big things. Cash is king. I'm going to say a statement I don't think anybody can ever argue with. No business ever failed because it had too much cash. Ever. So cash is absolutely fundamentally important to you. Whether you're in a public entity right now or you own a business, you have to have some discipline around your cash. All right. Here's another thing I know. Banks always want to lend you money when you don't need it. Right? Apex is doing well financially. Everybody wants to lend us money, but I don't need money. But they would still want to lend it to me. All right. But the more you need cash because you spend recklessly or you spend inefficiently or something big happens, I don't know, government shutdown, we don't send Medicare checks, we don't get reimbursed for a month, whatever, or there's a pandemic, right? When those kind of things happen, the more you need the money, the more expensive it's going to get, meaning interest rates are going to be higher. There's going to be terms that you can't live with, whatever those things are. Okay. Fiscal discipline is really, really important for all of our entities. Anybody heard recently about some big fire protection district a little bit north of here, but a little bit south of Denver that needs money? Right? What was their problem that snuck up on them? Property taxes. And I'm going to suspect they've been spending money where they really probably shouldn't have because they weren't being totally careful with their debt. All right. I'm going to give you West Metro. I live in West Metro's protection district, right? They have 10 years ago, they asked for a mill levy increase and it said, hey, if we get this mill levy increase, we won't need to ask for another one for 10 more years. 2 years later, they came back out and said, we need more money. And guess what? They went to the ballot box and got hammered. I think they lost that vote 70% to 30 or something like that. Then they came back out again 2 years later and they got turned down again. Because the investors said, you're not taking care of your money, obviously, because you keep coming back asking for more and more and more. Us owners, if we get into our business and we start having a problem, we start going, I need more investment money, it gets real expensive. You used to be able to maybe sell 5% of your company for this much money. Now they're going to want 15% for the same money because you're desperate and they know it. Your investors, your taxpayers will know if you're desperate and they're going to go, why are you spending that kind of money? That's when fire chiefs lose their job, fire boards change over and all those kind of things. And we've heard the story before, right? It happens all the time. All right, banking. What do banks care about if they want to lend you money? What?
Risk.
Well, risk. What's the risk to the bank? You're not going to pay it back, right? They want to know you're going to pay it back. So what are they going to do? To ensure that they're going to pay it back, this is what happens when you want to borrow on a house or whatever, the bigger your deposit down payment, the lower the risk for the bank, right? If you're high risk, you're high interest rate. That's why credit cards are so expensive. All right. They're going to want from your entity, whether it's I need to borrow money for a new fire engine or a new set of ambulances, or I got to borrow because I'm just running out of money and I'm not spending well. they're going to want to have really solid financials. Solid financials are not in a shoebox with a bunch of receipts that your accountant puts together to do your taxes once a year. All right. They want to know that you know what you're doing and did you have profitability. All right. So Pridemark, we had a really cool company, but we also spent a lot of money stupidly. We had a full-time medical director making $250,000 a year. Right? He was a medical director. Medical directors, generally speaking, aren't business people, because he came to me one time and he said, why do you keep talking about profit, Mike? As long as we make $1, it's better than losing $1. Well, that's cool, except that banks have covenants and restrictions on your lending. Like at that time, we had restrictions that said you have to be making this kind of profit in order for us not to call this loan due. So when we're barely breaking even, because we had all these expensive things, the banks at one point said, you're halfway through the year, you're not making money. You better find a way to start making cuts. And they wanted us to cut $300,000 a year of annual spending. So they do have control over that. So it's not, if as long as we make $1, we're good. You have to be able to pay your loan, your banks. You got to put money in the bank. If you're a private entity like us, you want profit. If you're a non-private entity, you want reserves. You got to keep reserves. All right. Here's the other thing. All you owners, how many of you are on personal loan guarantees? Do you have any loans? If you don't have loans, you don't have it. I got them. I've been on personal loan guarantees where my house is at risk for the last 23 years. You have to expect that if you're going to go out and start your own thing, but that's just what banks need. So every loan we have, I got fever. How many of you owner types get the copier rental guys? They want you to put a personal guarantee on your loan payment for a copier for $300 a month or whatever, right? I don't have to do those anymore, but still, my house has always been leveraged, if you will. All right. I don't want my house at risk, but I got to. So I can get rid of debt. All right. Before we move on, who's got questions? I'm going to have a couple stops for questions. Yeah.
Just a statement, going back to the South Met thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's the changes in the law over the last year. Now fire permits can go for sales tax, and I wonder if they're crazy like a boss.
I don't think that they were seeing that 8 years ago. I mean, honestly, maybe they thought so, but I don't think so. I think if they go for a sales tax increase, I think that'll get crushed too. That's just me because I live in the district. But you've got to prove that you know what you're doing with your money. At some point, people figure it out. Sometimes they vote for it. Jefferson County schools have a really hard time getting money because they've spent it so lavishly that every time they go out for a proposition on the ballot to raise more money, it generally gets defeated. And there's some reason for that. It's not because we don't like education. It's because we're like, where's this money going? Why is that admin office got so many people in it? Can't keep raising taxes. At some point, people leave. Fiscal discipline is really important, no matter what you're in. All right. Any other questions before we move on? Super exciting stuff coming up. All right. Now we're out of the macro. Let's talk about ambulance stuff. Okay. We talked about if you're new to the industry or you just want a big contract or you are growing really rapidly, there's some things you need to know. And I'm going to talk to you about how cash flows through a business. Okay. There's a couple truths that you need to understand. First, uncomfortable truth. You will almost always collect less than you think, and you'll collect it slower than you think. Now, let me give you an example, real live. You guys probably saw the headlines. San Diego replaces AMR, hires FALC. FALC's failing, not doing well. They kind of partner up with AMR or they get forced to partner up with AMR. And then the city decides, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make it like a public utility model. We're going to do all the billing and then we'll just pay the ambulance service a flat fee per month or flat fee per transport. I can't remember how they set that up. So they get into the ambulance business. More specifically, got into the ambulance billing business. Anybody see the headlines?
Yep.
Our money's not coming in as fast as we thought, and we're not collecting as much as we thought.
Yeah.
No shit. All right. Could have told you that. Okay, if they'd asked me, I would have said, this ain't gonna work the way you think it's gonna work. All right, and the reason is they went with a big national billing company, whatever, but it just doesn't happen as fast as politicians and uneducated people think.
You meant fire chief.
Huh? I meant the fire chief. Okay, yeah,
Careful what you wish for,
yeah.
just might get it.
Well, Well, they wish for it and they got it, and now they're having a problem. All right. So let me ask you another question. How many of you are CEO types? You're in charge, generally operations, mostly operations. How many? Where are you guys? Okay. How many of you are in charge of the financial side of the house? All right. So all you guys who said I'm in charge of operations but didn't raise your hand saying you're in charge of finances, you're wrong. If you're in operations, you have to know this stuff, or else you'll just blindly, like my old partner, Pride Mark, good guy, was just blindly spending money because it was cool and people loved him for it. Don't get stuck in that. All right, so San Diego is finding out the hard way. If I'm going to talk to you about anything that's important, this is it. And I'm going to actually show you later Apex's actual spreadsheet. All right, with our real numbers on it. We're going to stop recording at that point, but I'm going to show you how this plays out for us over years, not just this quick model. Okay. Cash pacing. If you don't know this, your ambulance transport money will come in over a course of about 6 months. You'll get most of it. And the pacing will be this. We are in, well, let's call it January. We run calls in January. We won't start collecting a lot of money till February. About 40% of the money for the revenue we think we're going to collect for January transports will show up in February. The next month, about 28, about 12, about 10 the next, 5. And this last 5 right here, this last 5%, really takes 3 years. Anybody who's in billing or knows anything about that, you got claims, you got people making payments of $50. It just takes forever. We sold Pride Mark in October of 2010. I still get bankruptcy notices from transports that we did in like 2008. Right? Stuff just drags on forever. But generally speaking, you will have a pace that takes about 6 months to collect your money. All right. Now, when we look at this is really small. I'm sorry, the screen's small. But let's just assume, for sake of argument, that we do 200 transports every month, and we're going to expect to collect $500 per transport, or $100,000 a month. So in January, this lays this out. You got 100,000 of revenue. The next month, you're going to collect about 40,000 of it. Next month, about 28, and then so on. Okay. Now, if we're only in business for 1 month, it's easy, but we're not, because every month we have more revenue. So in yellow, we got February. So here is how that lays out. And then March is in green. And you see how March and April lay out, right? See how this is staggering? That makes sense? This is going to happen when you have a brand new startup or you have a big growth thing. Right? Apex just went through a really big growth with University Hospital. We started that contract, Denver and Colorado Springs, July 1st last year. We had to ramp up expenses. We had to buy 13 ambulances and all the stuff that goes along with it. And we hired 50 people. And then we had to wait for all that cash from the university calls to show up 6 months later. After 6 months, you start stacking these on top of each other, and you finally get to what I call normalized collections. All right. The problem is that in the meantime, there's this thing called cash drag. So we had the cost of ambulances, the cost of equipment, and the cost of the people. And then you say, wow, okay, $2.4 million worth of stuff. And we've got all these people we're going to hire. We're going to hire them in the month before, right? Because you don't start them on the day of the contract. You gotta have them for a month before, so you got that expense. And you could say, well, that ends up being 3 million. But in reality, it was 3.6 or 7 million because of this cap drag problem. And it happens with big growth, startups, spurts, new contracts.
In your world, when you sign a contract like with UC, what does that mean? Is it just patient revenue you derive from that? Is there a contract amount you get from the facility?
No.
Is there a guaranteed last payment absorbed?
A little bit of all that. Yeah, so, I'm not gonna get all the details of the contract. Most of those things we have a pair of last resort where if it's really, really weird and we can't bill any insurance and, they've asked us to do this thing, but it's so rare that we contract with them. We are only contracted with them every time we run a transport, we bill the patient or their insurance or Medicare or Medicaid, and we go at risk, just like you do on the 911 side. Most of the time, right? They're not bailing us out and they're not definitely only paying for Part A stay stuff. Where the patient's inpatient, we're moving into another facility, still inpatient. That's when the hospital pays, and that's also very rare. Make sense? Right? So, and every contract's different depending on the facilities and who they are. Right? So we had this big cash drag problem. So when I'm looking at these things, and I'm like, again, I'll show you some of our numbers. You have to contemplate all that stuff, or else you say, I have a death by growth problem. Anybody heard that term? Death by growth? You grow so fast, you can't catch up. And you just die because you run out of money because you keep extending and the cash never catches up. And that can happen to people who aren't paying attention to this. Right? There's an ambulance company up in the Denver area that took on a little 911 contract, doing about 6 transports a day, and did not figure out ahead of time they're going to lose $20,000 a month doing it. So the owner keeps complaining to me, I'm losing $20,000 a month in this contract. Like, how could you not figure that out? You have to be able to do that, or else you just stumble into a wall. All right. Brain break. If it's painful for me, it's got to be painful for you because I do this every day, all day. All right. Any questions? Another question break. No? None? All right. Question. Oh.
No, I'm just looking. I'm seeing if there are questions.
Okay. Anybody like Monty Python?
Okay.
Now for something completely different. I'm gonna change gears just for a second. Why am I showing you champagne? Somewhere along the way, I went to culinary school and I went to sommelier training, and I'm both of those. By the way, speaking of culinary, anybody eat dinner here last night and have the short ribs? And nobody did that? Stay tonight and have the short ribs, then drive home. They are so flipping good. Anyway, the guy did a great job. So I'm just going to talk about something completely different for a minute. Champagne. Everybody thinks champagne is the same everywhere. The French are kind of weird about their naming of things and how they classify things and how they label things. So in the world of wine, if you want true champagne, right here, Moet Chandon champagne, it has to come from the Champagne region of France. France is this big, the Champagne region is this big geographically. If it's made to be sparkling wine and it's from the Champagne region, you can call it champagne. And the French are real meticulous about this stuff. Right? Anybody know what it is when it's sparkling wine and it's not from the Champagne region of France?
Sparkling wine.
Sparkling wine. Actually, they have a name for it. It's called Cremant. Okay, Cremant is what you call sparkling wines from France that isn't from Champagne. It gets caught. I swear to God, half of our study in wine was label reading in French and for France. Now, if you jump out of France and you go to Italy, it's called Prosecco. You order Prosecco and you order Cremant and you order Champagne, it's all the same. All right. It's just made in a different place, labeled a different way. All right. If you go to Spain, it's called Cava. It's going to taste the same, depending on the region, depending on the grapes. It might be farther north, might be a little sweeter, whatever. And then if you come to America, this is they'll call it sparkling wine out of respect for the Champagne region. They might call it sparkling wine. You might see California champagne, Miller Lite, the Champagne of King, or whatever that was that. Anyway, and then sometimes in California, you just do knucklehead stuff like this. Y'all just do epic shit. All right, I'm not going to ask for questions about champagne because that's about as much as I know about it, other than I really like drinking it. All right, more billing uncomfortable truths. Now, this is something, since we don't have any Springs Fire people here, nobody Springs Fire lying to me, right? You're all, it's okay. This is all public record stuff, so I'll just talk about it. You all know that Springs has been trying to get a new ambulance service here. Was it 7 years ago? They did an RFP process, a company called Priority One, got into negotiations, bailed, right? Didn't work. Then after that, Falk won, and then negotiations failed and bailed. So now the fire department wants to get into the ambulance business, and they wanted to form a special district, if you will, or an enterprise zone that had to be completely funded outside of the city, and the city could not bail out this enterprise if it failed. Somehow I got called to talk about the estimate that the city fire department had put on their cash per transport. All right. AMR told me what they're making for transport, and I know what our demographics say about the billing we do for 911 agencies, because we bill for 5 outside agencies other than Apex, including Denver Health, Arvada, Castle Rock, Adams County, and Thompson Valley. Okay, so we bill about 400 transports a day, right? Mostly other people's, and we do our own 120. All right, so they asked me about this. Colorado Springs Fire was guessing that they were going to collect $752 per transport. That is $250 more than what I would expect. They were about to make a $9 million mistake. And part of it was they were relying on their community demographics. I'm just making up numbers here. If you have 25% of your population, think about Colorado Springs, you got a downtown area and you got lots of growth going out to the north and to the east. If 25% of your population in an urban suburban area is got commercial insurance, they were expecting that 25% of the calls would be commercial insurance and they would collect X amount of money from that. They were wrong on all of their estimates. You're not going to collect that because who doesn't call? The people who are moving into Colorado Springs, north and east, are young families buying a big new home. They've got insurance, they got a job, but they're not the ones who call 911. Where does that all happen? Downtown. We bill for Denver. So many calls are downtown, transient, homeless, immigrant, whatever the thing is, non-payers. And the people with insurance who live at Cherry Creek up on a high rise are not calling 911, generally speaking. So you have to make sure that you're looking at not only the demographics of the city, look at Colorado Springs too. What's also here in Colorado Springs that would change your demographic? Military. Heavy military. What does military pay? Medicare rates. TRICARE, generally speaking, is Medicare. So now you got normal Medicare population, the normal Medicaid population, plus this military population. So they were going to collect even less money because of that. All right. So you have to be really, really careful in what you're looking at. So they were asking the wrong questions about demographics and all these kind of things. So we're back to my dad. So my dad, born in 1919, Pearl Harbor gets bombed. 2 days later, he and his best friend go to sign up. My dad joins the Army Air Corps before the Air Force. We had no Air Force in World War II. It was the Army Air Corps. My dad joins because he's going to be a pilot. Until they found out he was totally 100% colorblind. He had no idea because he was an only child in the Depression. He just thought that's the way stuff looked, right? I remember asking him one time, I go, Dad, you're totally colorblind. How do you know traffic lights? And he goes, I just know up and down. And isn't it great that each state doesn't say, well, we're going to have green on top or we're going to have red on top? Change that around, all right? My poor mom, he traveled a lot for business. My mom had one of those old Samsonite suitcases, hard plastic that you can fold it up like this. And she would say, Bob, if it's on the left side, it goes together. If it's on the right side, it goes together, but nothing matches this way. So my dad had to be very careful travel. Anyway, so he ended up, because enlisted and he was colorblind, he couldn't do anything in the air, which is probably why I'm here, because he would have more than likely died if he was a bomber pilot or any of those things, because they had such high attrition. But so he became they made him a B-17 bomber mechanic. He was in England. If any of you saw the show Masters of the Air, that's him, one of those mechanic types. So this is the back of a B-17 bomber that got shot to hell and was able to land. So the Air Force, or the Army Air Corps, started looking at bomber damage. How does this relate to anything? It has to do with, are we asking the right questions? All right. What they started looking at was all the planes that came back, and they said, boy, these things are taking lots of bullets in the wings, and they're taking lots of bullets in the tail and surviving. They said, we've got to find a way to protect them from all these bullets in the wings and all these bullets in the tail. What were they missing?
That's where you can take a hit, you know.
That's where you can take a hit and make it home. What were they not getting? What data did they not have?
All the planes didn't come back.
The planes that didn't come back, right? So what happened was the military is going around trying, we got to figure out how to protect the wings. And some mathematician somewhere said, wait a minute, you're missing part of the equation here. You're not looking, these planes are coming back, they were durable as hell. Except when they got hit in the engines and the cockpit. All right. My dad would talk about, 4 planes came back. We were able to get enough parts to get one of them going again. So anyway, they were asking the wrong question, which is what was going on with Colorado Springs down here, And then there's other loaded questions. How many anybody ask you this, or you're bored, or somebody asked, what's our collection rate? Everybody had that asked of them or have asked that question? Okay. I will tell you that is an absolutely irrelevant question. I could make my collection rate, depending on how I wanted to bill. I could bill it gross and keep taking the contractual discounts, or I could bill it net. I can make myself look like I got a 90% collection rate or 10% collection rate, depending on how I want to do it. It's a totally irrelevant question. The thing that matters, well, first of all, you're comparing apples to apples. If your collection rate is you bill Medicaid, let's say Medicaid's $350, Medicare is $400. If I bill Medicaid and I bill a $350 bill and they pay me $350, I have a 100% collection rate. If I do that with Medicare, I could say, I'm going to bill $400, I'm going to collect 80%, and then I got this other problem. So I might not have a 100% collection rate. But most of us bill at gross. Do you guys all bill gross? Like you're just billing whatever top line, $1,600 is about the average for the people we bill. And then you take that discount. One of the reasons we take that discount is we can go to our community and go, look at all the free care we give. Right? That's what we do with it, and all the bad debt. So you got to compare the right things, net versus gross, but ultimately that doesn't matter. The only thing that really matters is, what is my cash per transport? What am I actually collecting per transport? That's the only thing that matters. And you have to be able to figure that out very quickly. If you're going into a new neighborhood, you got to do some quick assessment without relying too much on the demographics, but you got to look around, right? Because we bill for these various places, Adams County collection rate versus Denver collection rate versus Castle Rock's collection rate are wildly different things. And we do the exact same billing. Just depends on the demographic of the area. So ultimately, you got to calculate this. I'm going to show you how we ultimately do this, to get to the cash per transport. All right, switching gears a little bit. If you're anybody in a situation where you're a little upside down in your income statement, you're losing money, maybe if you are, you don't need to raise your hand, but all right.
Well, yeah, that's when it's for.
Yeah. You're losing dough. So let's say we're losing dough. There's only 3 things you can do. You have to cut expenses, or you've got to grow. You got to get more transports for the same amount of people or something. Or you got to borrow. There's not much more you can do. Okay, so I know this. So this is, I'm going to bring this again right back to reality, because when I was testifying around the Colorado Springs thing, I really wasn't testifying, but I was having conference calls and Zoom calls with their finance department at the city. And then I sat in and I watched the city council meeting that happened in June when they got turned down. The vote they just lost the vote by one. They got turned down, but somebody asked during the conversation, somebody asked the fire chief, well, what happens if we don't collect as much as we thought and it doesn't come in as fast as we thought? Because I said to the city finance, guess what? It's not going to come in as fast and you're not going to have as much. And the fire chief said exactly this. He said, well, I got some levers I can pull. Okay, what are those levers? He said, I can cut expenses, right? Or I can raise revenue. Okay, cool. So let's answer that question. I'll cut expenses. Sounds easy. Where do you realistically cut non-business? People. Go ahead.
I want to there, but my first question that would be, if you could realistically cut, why aren't you already cutting?
Well, that's the other question. If you really want to look at it from the different angle, so you do that now, but you can't. Okay, so here's the deal. If they're going to try to take over because they're getting bad service from their current provider, and they're going to hire all these people and then realize that they're losing money, they're going to cut people, and then guess what's going to happen to the service that they're trying to fix? It's going to be just as bad as it is now. So you can't just cut. You cannot cut fixed. You can't. If you're paying rents, you can't cut that. You can't cut your insurance. You can't cut disposable supplies. You got to keep running calls. You can't cut your fuel. You can't cut. You're not going to go cut your employees' pay too much. You can say, hey, let's all take a 20% discount because we did the math wrong. That's a hard sell. Okay, so you end up cutting. You should be cutting admin. Sorry for all you guys in admin, but if you're a governmental entity and you got problems, here's how many times do we see the headline? And I just saw it at South Metro. If we don't get the money we need, we're going to have to shut the fire station in the busiest place, and people are going to die in the streets. That's the argument we get, right? Because it's heroic. We're going to lose that, not save lives. Okay, well, what about the 6 admin people we hired last year to just augment? You didn't have them a year and a half ago. That's where you got to cut. But the emotion, and we got to get tax money, is we're going to cut the most important thing, right? Not the admin, not the peripheral. That's where you should be cutting is admin. But you end up having to cut paramedics and EMTs. If you're going to cut. I mean, you can shave a couple dollars here and there, but nothing meaningful, right? If you're only losing $1,200 a year, that's not a big deal. You can save that on paper. All right. I know, he said, the chief said, we'll just raise our rates. Okay, so you can either raise your rates if you're a private, or you can raise taxes, or you can, if you're a government entity that's billing, you can try to do both. Here's the problem. You won't get as much cash as you expect. How many people understand this part? If you try to collect $100 more, well, you're going to raise your rates $100. You will be lucky to see $9 or $10 of that. Make sense? Medicaid ain't paying you any more money. Medicare's not paying you any more money. The only people who are going to pay extra money are insurance companies. And they're not going to pay any more money just because you raise the bill most of the time. All right, so we do all this billing for 911. Like I said, 370 or whatever a day that we do. The insurance companies right now are paying about 150% of Medicare allowance. That's what we're getting, and we're constantly fighting with them. By the way, this is my plug. Sean, you know what I'm going to say about HB 251088 or whatever it gets labeled again in the next legislative session. We've got to get that voted in so insurance companies start paying the right amount of money. If you're not on board with that, raise your hand. We'll have that conversation ready. All right. So we got to do that. That will make all of our lives easier. We'll have less people doing follow-up. We won't be doing all this other stuff. Can't believe Polis vetoed that. Thank God he's term limited only for that vote. I mean, he did some great jobs with other things, but not that vote. All right. So you're not going to collect much. So if you want to raise $60 a transport, you've got to raise your bill about $600. Now I have a question. You going to have political support for that in your district? Hey guys, we got to raise our bill $1,000 so we can collect 100 more per transport, and then we'll be just breaking even. a hard way to go. Or you can borrow. Okay, what bank wants to lend something into, hey, you're losing money? Cool, let's give you some more. Banks aren't gonna do that. They gotta see you've been doing this, they gotta see you're coming and doing this before they're gonna lend you money. And if they do, you may not get lending from a bank, alternative lenders, institutions, that buddy you know that has money is loan sharking it out, whatever. Anybody hear of the ads for Amerifactors? They're like on radio and stuff like that. It's called factoring. That is the worst way to go. Because what they do is they say, oh, you got $100,000 of accounts receivable, we'll give you $30,000 for it. And you say, I need the money right now, so I take it, and you lose the other 70,000 you were eventually going to collect. It's a bad program. But the companies and it's not just for ambulance, they rarely lend it. There's nobody does this on the ambulance side. But businesses that need to go to factoring to collect their AR early, they're in trouble. Right? It's not just ambulance people that got to keep their cash flow good. Every business has got to do it. Get in.
So the big thing is factoring related to motor vehicle accidents, especially. It's not Medicaid, it's the personal injury on the person's insurance. So a lot of times, if I hit you, my insurance is responsible for paying your medical bills, right? But
Okay.
if you lawyer up,
Yeah.
then it's gonna take forever to get it.
Yeah.
Your lawyer's gonna want me to take Medicaid. If you're a Medicaid patient,
Mhm.
so I accept the Medicaid patient, I'm writing off the rest of that balance that you
Yeah.
mentioned you do.
Well, yeah, that's a little bit of a different topic. But you know what we do with that? We tell the attorney we don't care that you're in litigation. I don't care. Somebody's got to pay us right now. You guys can settle later. The attorneys hate that, by the way, because then they're going to be coming out of pocket, right? More than likely. So we just don't do that. When we're billing out, we just say, no. Somebody's got to pay us. You settle your lawsuit. You guys can all settle later because every attorney thinks they got the winning case, right? Everyone. All right. So you don't want to do any of those things. And all of those options are expensive. So the point again, going back to cash is king, conserving cash, putting reserves away. Any of those things are very, very, very important to your world. All right. So one of the problems we have in EMS, and Denver Health is a classic example of this, is they had all the heroic caregivers who didn't think that they needed to do paperwork. Heard this story before? Why do I have to do paperwork? I'm just here to save lives. That's somebody else's job, right? So documentation. So we want them to do documentation. The Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth created the no margin, no mission concept. If you don't make some profit margin, how are you going to complete the mission? How are you going to continue to run calls? A lot of caregivers don't understand why they need a signature. Why do I need to ask for this? Why do I have to write this patient care report so that we can get reimbursed? Not cheating, but just saying what happened. What was the medical necessity for this call? Right. So there's got to be some messaging that we can give. And here's what we try to talk to our people about. Right? Is you go out and you give really good care. I mean, not one of us and not one of our patients ever woke up one day and said, guess what? Today's the day I'm going to have my ambulance call. I'm going to have a little chest pain. I'm going to call an ambulance because I've never done it. Let's see what the fuss is all about. Nobody does that. We go out, we show up on time, we show up with great care, we are compassionate, and we take the person to the hospital. And our troops think that's it. So we try to tell them that the process of giving great care has got to be extended to the billing process because we want to make this patient's life easy as possible, let the insurance company pay as much. So let's get the documentation, let's get a signature, let's do those things to help out. Because they're going to get a bill. And we can't do them all for free. All right. Back in the day, Denver Health, anybody work at Denver Health back in the day? I mean, their documentation was like, took Joe Smith to the hospital at the end.
Yes, sir.
And why? Did I do that?
Yeah, no, there was a.
Oh, somebody said, yes, I did.
Yeah, someone online.
Okay. Anyway, very little documentation. Part of it is because they just don't have any time. So we've changed that. We helped them move that along when we took over their billing in 2020. Lucky for us, we took that over March 1st. Anybody know what happened right after March 1st, 2020?
There was a thing.
Super helpful for us. Megan, our vice president of operations, is here right now. She was hired as our director of clinical, and she started in December or November of 1990 or 2000 and I'm sorry, 19. And within a couple of months, she became the COVID czar, which is not in her job description, but we just called it, those other duties as assigned. Unfortunately for her. So anyway, we just want to get the message to the employees that it's really important to help the patient along the way. We don't get the obviously the benefit of pre-authorization most of the time and all those things. Okay. Leadership nuggets. Bill Gates came up with this great quote, and I love it. Busy is the new stupid. And we're getting into why your phones are in envelopes. Okay. Bill Gates, I watched an interview with him. It was him and Warren Buffett were sitting next to being interviewed by one of those PBS documentary kind of things. I don't know. And Bill Gates pulls out his calendar and he's got every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, whatever, he's got stuff all day, every day, stuff. Warren Buffett pulls out his calendar. He's like, take the grandkids to Dairy Queen next Wednesday. And then at the end of the month, I got to go to a wedding. And that's it. This entire month of April had like 3 things on it. Because he said, busy is the new stupid. So, and what I take that to mean is if you think you're so important that you are constantly, every day, all day, answering questions, taking calls, making all the decisions, you are doing yourself and your business a disservice. Right? When I was watching everybody yesterday on their phone, returning emails, whatever that thing was, clearly not paying attention to what was going on. But what it told me was that either they have a couple things, and I gave a lecture on this a couple of years ago, all about leadership and all about this thing. It was if you are that dependent on your phone and everybody's dependent on you to do everything, you've done one of 2 things wrong. You either not trained your people to be able to do it on their own, or you don't trust them. That's it. So here's the part that happens, right? If you train your staff well, if they can take care of all the day-to-day things so that you don't have to, you can come here and listen and pay attention to the whole lecture. Or on an even bigger note, you can work on your business instead of in your business. Anybody heard that term before? If you're flying at 300 feet in the forest, you have no idea what's going on around you. But if that's where you operate, where everything that you do every day is you got to make all those decisions, yeah, you think you've got power, but it's artificial. If you can fly above the tree level and at 10,000 feet, you're on your business, you can say, uh-oh, I see this coming, or uh-oh, I see that coming, or this is going really well. You have people to do this down here. You got to be able to think. You got to be able to take time to think. If you can take time to think, you can also take and your people are doing your work for you. You can go on vacation. Anybody ever used to work for AMR or currently work for AMR? Okay, some of us did. If you were in a leadership position at AMR, they used to have this thing called faux vacation or BS vacation or whatever the guys used to tell me it was. Hey, I'm going to Hawaii with my family. Cool, that's awesome. Have a great time. But there's this conference call on Tuesday, and you got to do this thing at the end. There's a proposal you got to finish. Return all your emails on time. So where are they? They're working from home, except their home is in Hawaii that week. And their kids are going, when's dad going to get out of the computer? When is mom going to be able to not have to be on a conference call? When our guys go on vacation and when I go on vacation, I disappear. Try to. It's hard. But that's my choice. When our folks go on vacation, I say, go on vacation. I don't want to hear from you. Take the time to recharge. You can't do that if you're constantly answering, getting on phone calls and all that. The other thing I know is if somebody can't do that, they can't disengage and go on vacation, I know that they haven't trained the people that work for them well enough to be the next, the succession plan. If Megan, who's sitting back there, can't go away, then Dan, who's sitting right here and isn't able to do the job, then that's Megan's problem. And Megan can't get away because she doesn't trust Dan. She does. Dan, sorry, you're sitting right here. So you're fodder for this. Does that make sense? So that's why I'm trying to, the experiment is put your phone away and see if you can do it. It'd be really good if you could do that for an hour and a half, then maybe you can do it for 2 weeks or a week. Or when you want to go somewhere where you just don't want to be on the doggone phone, when I'm on the golf course, I don't want to be on the phone. I don't answer my phone. Put it in my bag and I know, my phone right now is in my briefcase over here, right? You want to be able to do that, but you got to be able to disengage and you got to work hard to do that. All right. Who wants to look at actual Apex numbers just for fun? Yay. Okay. I just want to show you how this works in reality. We're gonna have to do a little bit of work here.
Books, baby.
Well, yeah, I'm not opening the books. You won't even know what you're looking.
So while you were speaking, there was something online. It says he was at Denver Health during the time you talked about.
Bobby, tell Bobby I said hi. Okay, now, so
You want me to pause?
yeah, I'm throwing this up to the screen, right? It's not, I've got it on my screen.
I think you maybe give it time. This could be another change. I am not the techie guy.
Uh-oh.
CJ, come on.
Crap.
One.
It's not like you're on the spotter today, but you know, all of us are expecting the book.
Oh.
Starting to get a pull the sausage.
Are you
sharing your screen?
You already said you were way
Yeah.
smart.
CJ.
You have to not share this and share the other.
Yeah,
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, guess what? My sharing guy.
what are we on Zoom or Teams?
What is it?
This is super exciting. Let me explain what the spreadsheet looks like.
Numbers on it, lots of.
Lots of numbers. But I just want to see a trend. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how we calculate bad debt. Do all of you estimate bad debt? All you billing types, do you have to do that for your financials, right? You say, well, we're guessing on the bad debt, or do you try to take actuals, like whatever you wrote off that month becomes bad debt for the month?
A ladder.
The latter, okay. Yeah,
Net
bad debt,
APC.
capital accounts,
Is that,
things you're not going to collect.
is that what I'm sharing? Net APC for retail?
Yes. Yes,
Does that work?
there it is. All right, and then I'm going to have one more for you in just a second.
Okay.
All right, so this